Equal Time Soccer. We are back live. Hello, I'm Mark Privratsky. I'm here with my co-host Dani Foxhoven Young. How you doing, Dani?
Hello, everybody. Doing good. We're happy to be here. I'm sorry that you're feeling a little under the weather though.
Yeah, I got this. Look, we've said it all along. This is a pre-professional league, so we're all doing our best to. And I'm having a flu game. That is to say, a COVID game at home. But look, thankfully, the coaches don't need me to run out there. They don't even need me to be a ball boy, which I'd love to get to do. They just need us to talk about the team. So we're gonna do it.
Yep.
And first, I want to start out by thanking. We got a few new Patreons last week, and just so people know, I mean, like we don't pitch it. We maybe should be more shameless, but there is a Patreon for Equal Time, and it is really important. If you saw me in St. Louis and thought, God, how can they do that? Well, I'm not independently wealthy. It's partly because we get support from you all, and because of that, like there was video at the game. Otherwise, there may not have been. So we do things like that, and we do things like get amazing guests like Dani. And we also, during the year, we pay the college players who are on our show because of name, image, and likeness. And that's your Patreon money that does that. So thanks to everybody, including a lot of my immediate family. Donate to that. Dani, Aurora is still undefeated. They won 3-0 last week away at Dutch Lions. And they continue to run undefeated.
Yeah. Just crushing it this season. I'm so thrilled to see how well the team has done, not only for the expectation of the fans and kind of like all of us were wondering how this season was going to go. This being the first season, I don't think anybody would have expected it to go this well. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's been amazing to see. It's been amazing to watch the team really come into their own, the players come into their own. It's been really cool to see how Nicole has adjusted and made the team. You can tell there's a team culture, and I love that the community is embracing it. So I'm just stoked to see how well they're doing, and I hope that they can continue to keep performing into the last bit of the season here.
Yeah, and although it wasn't their win or their result that did it, they finished their business against Dutch Lions. Yep. Green Bay had an away game at Chicago City, which they ended up tying 3-3. So by nature of dropping points at all, it clinched the division for Aurora. So we've been talking about it. It's been boring to not have it actually resolved. So they clinched the Heartland division with time to spare, yep. Which is impressive in a short season to do it with 2 games to spare.
Yep, it is. It really is because it is such a short season, and that also speaks to the strength of the other teams throughout. Like, to give Green Bay a run and a 3-3 run at that is really, it's either Green Bay's legs were starting to get a little tired, or the other teams are starting to, really come together in their own as well. So I think it speaks to the strength of the division, but even more so, it shows how well the early points that Aurora was able to get were really important now, because now they can take a second. They can put in some other players to give people some rest, get minutes on other people who haven't had as many minutes, and not have to stress about that.
Yeah, and and also it's impressive to see because there were times where, I mean, they started out with a tie with Green Bay, and then the fact that each of these teams too, I mean, credit to Ka and credit to the Chicago teams who've had a lot of good results. And let's just be honest, like the resources do play a role. We see them travel thinner with a little thinner teams. Like I'll be like, I looked at the last game, Dani, and I was surprised. I didn't realize this watching on the stream, but the Dutch Lions had no subs in the last game. So they played everybody 90, and it matters. So I mean, it is. I'll say it's impressive some of the time the way we've seen teams even like travel up to TCO and compete with Aurora, because the score lines, I mean, yes, we say, Aurora could have scored 5 or 6, but they didn't, and they often had games that were pretty tight, at home against teams who had an uphill battle. So, I mean, yeah, credit to the middle of the table for making a lot of entertaining games, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And this in the history of this league, the W League, USL, all of those leagues, typically teams we talked about it throughout the season, teams will have rosters shift so much based on players' outside work. Maybe they have internships, jobs, maybe they have to go back to school for a little bit or have vacations, whatever that is. Those rosters change so much, and which is typically why you have a larger roster and you just have players kind of come in and out. But for those teams that don't have that large of a roster, it becomes really, really difficult mid-season when everybody does have other things going on. So I think that really played out, and you can see that. It's kind of tough on those girls because it's exhausting, to be honest, but it's at the same time that it's kind of the reality of the league right now.
Yeah. And I mean, coaches are obviously wanting their players to come back, well rested. But to be honest, like college players are used to doing 2-fers on the weekend. I mean, they sub, and it depends on where you play, and you may sub a decent amount, but it's not unusual for them to do in a short turnaround, but they're also not doing it in like 90 degrees on turf, or wherever they're doing it.
That's exactly right. Plus, usually when you're in a college environment, you have a little bit more access to like nutrition right after a game. You have recovery room, you have trainers that are there all the time, and that is not necessarily the case. Actually, I can't think of any WT leagues that have those kind of resources. Where it's like you can get right into a training room, that kind of stuff. So I think that's something that college coaches get a little bit concerned about as the back half of the season starts happening, because they're like, go do it, go train. We want you we want you staying fit throughout the season. But then as it approaches to their season, they're always like, oh, now we want you slowing down because you're going to come into preseason and we're going to ramp right back up. So it's a really, really interesting dichotomy between coaching and just where each coach's head is at for their players.
Yeah. And you've seen both sides of it. I appreciate the perspective, because you've been that coach waiting for some players, to come into preseason. And let's just say, we'll say to all the coaches of Aurora players, look, these are top-notch facilities. We got the Vikings trainers. So for what it's, I joke, I say it with a smile, but I mean, truthfully, it is unique. When you watch the pregame warmups at Aurora, it's like, oh, there's 2 trainers there. They're at the table in St. Louis. They had a trainer travel with them, which is very cool. And I also was like, can I come down and get some soft tissue work if the trainer's not busy?
I also need a massage, so.
It's for learning for them.
It is, absolutely. No, I think it is. I think it definitely is really interesting. I myself, as a coach, I always was somebody who said more minutes are better. The college season gets so long come November, October, November, when the end of everybody's seasons are, when conference playoffs start happening. Everybody's dead no matter what. So for me, I always thought it was better to get more game minutes, specifically because those kind of minutes are what matter the most.
Right.
Now, the thing that was really scary is you don't know what every style of coach these other coaches are going to be. Are they doing a fitness day? Are they doing heavy workouts, a heavy practice load every day? Or are they kind of letting the girls recover? That, I think, is more the challenge rather than the game minutes. But yes, it is hot. So there's that, you're adding in a different level to it too. So it's a challenge. It's a real challenge.
Yeah, we'll see. I think we'll get to the lineup in a bit, because there's a couple rotations, although there's consistency excuse me, for the most part. And I will say, just to wrap up, the fact that, and people probably saw this, we've been talking about it forever, but the playoffs being clinched mean that Minnesota Aurora will host Indy 11 on July 13th. And so the W League has started to put out people who have clinched, and then different teams have put out info. Not every position has been clinched. So I'm sure once we see that sometime this weekend, then the W League will put out more of like the actual layout of the bracket. But, you can assume some things, because Aurora, we know, is hosted to bid to host. Not every team wants to do that. They also have a really good record. So if you take care of business, you win your games, and you have a better record and you want to host, I don't think the league's going to intentionally push games away from 6,000 fans at TCO. So I think, but look, they have to win the first game. So
for sure, that's the most important thing. And I think right now, Nicole is probably saying, I bet this game you will start to see a little bit earlier subs than you normally do, because there are a few changes right off the bat, but I don't think it's anything that's really out of, it's not like out of the ordinary. It's not like a full team change up, but I think you will start to see sooner change ups early. Just right now, she's trying to kind of keep everything solid, but not overwork anybody. I think you'll start to see that. And then really it'll be a fine tune before we get into the end of, into playoffs. At that point, it's kind of a all everybody loose. Like, let's get after it. Let's see what we can do. And let's try to bring home a championship.
Yeah. And so
I think if you do that in front of a crowd, gosh, I don't know. I can't think of a better atmosphere for these girls to bring it home to.
It would have been really disappointing even if Aurora made the playoffs, but we didn't get to host a game just because no one wants it to end. When you're there at the stadium, it's a special thing. So it's with such a short season, it is a really cool thing that we get at least one more chance to showcase the team, and it's up to them if we get more. But yeah, the rotations they're like I said, pretty tight. I mean, so the regular starters in terms of everybody except for Eli Rapp is not in the 18 today, who normally starts at outside back. And Abby Ostrom is the regular replacement for her. She's playing. So I don't know if Eli's just getting a rest, perhaps, because I mean, she's played a lot of minutes. So that's one of those probably intentional things. So no full Rapp today, but it's Ronnie's chance to start. So that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. This is part of the season that you might start see little things kind of bugging girls, where maybe a little injury has gotten a little bit exacerbated. They've played a ton of minutes. They've worked really hard in practice, maybe not had as much rest as they would, or be able to take a day off. So I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see some of those things sneak up, and knowing that they are going into a season, some of them are probably being a little bit more conservative. Just there's no need to push it right now, especially if we can get into if we're in the championship, right? So I think that probably is where a lot of players and Coach Nicole's head is at.
Yeah, and so to put it over to the Green Bay side, I want to highlight a couple of people, because Green Bay we love on Aurora, like some of the players who've been out of college for a while, people who are getting an opportunity in the game, like Christelle, and we have players who have already finished and are trying to keep it going. Green Bay has some of the coolest stories like that. So I just wanted to highlight a couple. So Alyssa Miracle, who's an elementary teacher in Green Bay now, and Brianna Morrissey both played at UW Green Bay. Brianna Morrissey started there in 13 and ended in 19, and then, which is just, so I love that they're getting the chance, and also that they're local, to Green Bay. And someone else I wanted to mention, because this conference, honestly, we have to look it up, but the most players may be coming from Bemidji State. They have 4 at least. They would have had 5 with one of the Aurora players, but one player I missed. So they have Alyssa Stumbaugh, who's Bemidji's starter ostensibly in goal. She's Green Bay starter most of the time and has performed well, obviously. But they're also their leading scorer, I didn't notice this before, is Skylar Prentice. She graduated from Bemidji a couple years ago, D2, and now must just be living in Green Bay. She has 4 goals. I'm pretty sure she set up that amazing equalizer in the opener. And so there's just some really cool stories in a long time. One other player I noticed in the first game who's also, been productive with a goal and assist, but is really dangerous, is Kitaru. And she's a player who plays up top, and she's Kenyan. She played at Lamar and had 11 goals and 6 assists the last 2 years. So those are just some of the players who are really performing. And they also have a lot of players they do have some younger players who are from local Wisconsin schools. And so anyway, between them and some stories with Aurora, there's really exciting pathways to see that. The opportunities are never gone, Dani.
They're not. No. And that's the really exciting thing about this. Even we talked about it after the first game. Bev Goebel, Yanez, she played after even her professional career. She went and played in LA. And so, I think it's that is the fun and the beauty of this league, is you don't have to be done. Just, even though most of these girls, a lot of them are college athletes kind of in the middle of their college career, that's not the end of it. And there's always places to play. It might not be at a professional level yet, but, it's growing, which is really fun to see.
Yeah, well, and don't forget, players standing out in this league, the USL is creating a league starting next year to be a paid professional league underneath NWSL, which will be a big challenge, but it's also really exciting. And that just means roster spots. So that's a lot of teams. If they come in with even 12, 16 teams, that's right now NWSL are the only paid jobs, for playing. So players in the W League should be thinking about, that potential. There were a couple things I heard I want to shout out. So there was a really good interview that head coach Nicole Lukic did, actually with Wes Burdine on the 55-1 podcast, which is a Minnesota soccer podcast. Wes is also one of the Minnesota Aurora owners, and he owns the bar that I work at. So once again, my life's not too insular, Danny. Everything's good. But Nicole, there were some really interesting things you would have liked to hear so she was talking about, she shares a lot of this in post-game interviews, but among the things she mentioned, among talking about like the positive culture the team has that we've seen and talked about, was just how a couple of the players ended up on the team. So I wanted to mention this. So Morgan Stone joined the team, I think like a week before the first game. And she just simply got connected because when our keeper coach joined, she posted on Insta about it. And Morgan Stone's assistant coach saw it and messaged her. And that's how we got our leading scorer, Danny.
I love that.
And the next one I wanted to say, which is amazing, and Morgan from Boise State, Morgan's been an amazing player for us. And then I wanted to mention about Sangmin Cha, because she's been just, like, where did she come from?
Yep.
She plays at Campbellville University, which is not D1. And Nicole is pretty sure she couldn't remember 100% that was just a submission to the website, that Cha just sent a submission to the website. And but this is the point I wanted to bring up, is that Nicole took the time to just watch the video that Cha submitted, which of course, I don't know how many they got. I mean, it could have been a ton, but it does speak to like, it's not tongue in cheek. Like the fact that we had a coaching staff being paid, or like going to be paid in a real way, that were multiple coaches, like, not lost on me. It could just be Nicole going over the top, but also that she was able to see some of those things and look at what those players mean, to our team. So some of those things I thought were really, really cool to hear.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. I love that. I do think it speaks to, like, if you have a coach that has another job and is not being paid for this, then they're not going to have as much time really to dedicate, because, at the end of the day, we all have to make a livelihood too. So I love that. I think that really speaks to the resources that have come from the community, from the ownership, everybody here to be able to be a part of this. And to go back to your USL thing, where next year they are going to be that, an underneath league. I think that is going to change. I honestly think that will change the face of women's soccer that we see today. Because if you think about the amount of teams, even, when I was in it, went from like 10 to 8 to 11. Yeah. It's like fluctuated so much. And every year that really changes the amount of just like flat out roster spots they even have the ability to have. And then when you add in national team players, or players who are in at least on a contract with national team, that's adding, you really only have like 10 spots on each team, and doesn't matter the quality of the players that are coming out of college now. You have your veteran players who have been there forever, and that really doesn't allow for many spots in there. So I think with USL coming in, that's going to just be able to expand the roster size to be able to have players come up and down. If players need more minutes, or they're just a training player, they still are going to be able to get game minutes, which when you're at the NWSL league, if you're not playing, game minutes are the hardest thing to come by. So yeah, I think that we'll see the game changing even more in the next couple of years.
Yeah, well, and it's, there were this year, I mean, there's lots of good coverage. I mean, Meg Linehan and Steph Young cover it for The Athletic, but that NWSL, like tons of those teams just have to cut first round picks, and it's not because, it's players who should have an opportunity, but the spots are too small, and it's just so elite to make it on those. I mean, because we joke about, the players you were in proximity to, but I mean, you were in that, you had to make that cut too, Danny. So,
I did. Yeah. My first year with Portland, I had to I went through the tryout. I was actually a tryout player. So even though I was drafted, that's how crazy it was.
Right. Well, and speaking of tryout players, among the people at the first tryout, Christelle and Yewa, and then Mariah Wynn was also at the open tryout. And I just have a picture that just came across Twitter to share with you, Danny.
Yes. Yes.
See the Wolves?
Wow, holy smokes.
Okay, so it's Jelena Zavilic and Mariah Wynn. So this is another thing that I think I noticed maybe in the players joking, but Mariah Wynn has been wearing at least at times a SpongeBob temporary tattoo during the games. I don't know if it's not like she's always showing the arms, but so apparently her and Zavilic are really up to it with the Wolves. Danny, have you ever worn temporary tattoos to intimidate in the game?
I have not temporary tattoos. No, no, just real. I got my real tattoos, so that's about it, though.
Do you have a wolf howling on your
I
thigh?
I do actually.
Do you have a wolf howling?
I literally do. Yeah.
So you're in the sisterhood with them, and might I say, and shout out to all the to probably only my family watching, but to the Walker Wolves, my high school, that looks exactly like the wolf howling,
Yeah.
and we're not very good, so you don't want to harness our energy in soccer, but I
No,
love the wolf.
Mine is a lot smaller. It's like this big, and I got it with a couple other players on the Reign, and we're all big Wolf fans. So yes, I'll let them be a part of the Wolf Pack too.
What the wolf?
Yeah.
Walker Wolf. But what players got it with you? Can you say?
I will keep their names out of it today. I'll keep their names out of it.
Get on Insta, everybody. You can find the players. Search for the if we were
Twitter, do your thing.
We're not the type of show to have Reddit followers. I don't use Reddit, but those would be the people to dig into that.
Maybe we'll see.
All right. Excuse me. Good to talk to you, Dani. We're excited to see another win today, and we're in the playoffs, so we know on the 13th we'll be at the stadium at least.
Yep, we're all excited. Get healthy before, so we can all be there.
And get some tea.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody.